Elon Musk's day took an unexpected turn the moment he stepped onto the tarmac. His private jet had been delayed, and with a critical meeting looming that could shape the future of technology, time was not on his side. As he approached the boarding gate, the last thing he anticipated was a confrontation. The pilot, cold and dismissive, stopped him in his tracks. "Mr. Musk, I'm afraid you can't board this flight," he said, his tone as indifferent as his words were final. Elon, known for his calm demeanor, was taken aback. His voice was measured but firm as he asked for clarification. "Excuse me?" he inquired, his piercing gaze fixed on the pilot. The pilot's response was simple but puzzling. "You've been flagged by security. We're following protocol. You're not allowed to board today." A hush fell over the crowd of onlookers as Elon stood there, processing the absurdity of the situation. There was no apparent threat, no justification, just an arbitrary decision that felt more like an affront than a legitimate security measure. The atmosphere grew heavy with tension as Elon assessed the pilot's cold dismissal. It wasn't just about being denied a seat on a plane. It was about being treated as insignificant, a mere passenger rather than a person of influence. For a man accustomed to rewriting the rules, this was unacceptable. Elon's sharp mind quickly shifted gears, processing the situation as a symptom of something larger, a system that allowed power to be wielded capriciously, disregarding fairness or logic. His determination solidified as he turned away, not in anger, but with quiet resolve. What had started as a personal inconvenience had now become a battle to expose and challenge the misuse of authority. In a bold and swift move, Elon Musk's decision to purchase the airline within hours sent shockwaves through the business world. The rapid acquisition was seen as a decisive action to reclaim control of a significant industry that had been shaken by challenges, likely including external pressures and changes in the aviation sector. Musk, known for his unorthodox and strategic business maneuvers, once again demonstrated his ability to act quickly and decisively in high-stakes situations. The media quickly jumped to speculate about his motives. Some outlets suggested that Musk's purchase was driven by a desire for revenge. They pointed to a series of personal or professional grievances he may have had with the airline or with key figures in the aviation sector, suggesting that this acquisition was, in part, a means of personal retribution. Others, however, took a more analytical approach, theorizing that Musk saw an opportunity to challenge the status quo within the airline industry, which has traditionally been dominated by a few powerful players and tightly regulated frameworks. In both scenarios, the media painted Musk's acquisition as an act of disruption, but the motivations behind it remained unclear. Was it a retaliatory strike? Or was it part of Musk's broader ambition to push boundaries and innovate in industries where he saw room for improvement? Whatever the true reason, one thing was certain. The acquisition was another indication of Musk's readiness to challenge entrenched systems and his relentless pursuit of new frontiers in business. His ability to wield influence and provoke reactions with such bold moves continues to solidify his reputation as a highly unpredictable and impactful figure in global industries. In the wake of his swift acquisition of the airline, Elon Musk quickly reframed the incident as something far larger than a personal business move. He positioned it as a symbolic representation of the systemic issues plaguing corporate structures, particularly within industries like aviation. Musk, ever the disruptor, suggested that the airline's internal challenges, whether financial mismanagement, operational inefficiencies, or lack of innovation, were reflective of broader, ingrained problems in corporate systems at large. By acquiring the airline, Musk claimed that he was not merely taking control of a struggling company, but stepping into a larger battle to reform corporate practices. In line with his broader vision, Musk assembled a team of experts and industry insiders tasked with investigating the intricacies of the airline sector. His aim was not only to uncover what went wrong within the airline itself, but to dig deeper into the systemic flaws that hinder progress and innovation across the entire industry. This was not just about fixing a single company. It was about reevaluating and reforming how the airline industry operated at its core. Musk's approach to this mission was rooted in his familiar philosophy of disruption. He believed that traditional corporate structures, which often rely on bureaucratic systems, outdated practices, and complacency, needed a complete overhaul to meet modern needs. This was more than a business acquisition. It was a declaration of intent to radically change the airline industry from the inside out. Musk's team began working on a comprehensive set of reforms that would address everything from customer service to operational efficiency, potentially setting new standards for what the future of air travel could look like. This bold strategy aimed not just at profit, but at reshaping an entire industry. Elon Musk's acquisition of the airline marked the beginning of a sweeping cultural and structural overhaul within the company. His approach to transforming the organization was not solely about improving its financial standing or streamlining operations. It was about creating a new foundation based on principles that prioritize people over profit. Musk recognized that the airline industry, like many others, had grown entrenched in profit-driven models that often neglected the human element, whether it was the well-being of employees or the experience of passengers. One of the first steps Musk took in his overhaul was to address employee benefits, signaling a shift from an environment where workers were often treated as expendable to one where their contributions were recognized and valued. This included improving health benefits, implementing better work-life balance practices, and increasing job security across the board. Musk's vision was clear. A well-supported and motivated workforce would be more engaged and productive, which would ultimately translate to a better experience for passengers and more sustainable business practices. By taking care of his employees, he laid the groundwork for a more harmonious and effective corporate culture. Addressing the systemic issues within the airline became Musk's next priority. The existing model had grown rigid and complacent, with inefficiencies at nearly every level of operation. From outdated technology systems to cumbersome customer service protocols, there were numerous areas that required attention. Musk brought in experts from various industries to identify these pain points and implement solutions that would modernize the airline. Changes ranged from overhauling the booking and check-in processes to upgrading the fleet with more energy-efficient planes. This was not simply about improving the bottom line, it was about creating a smoother, more efficient experience for everyone involved. Perhaps the most significant shift Musk made was in the company's overall mission and values. The focus of the airline was redirected from purely profit-driven goals to a people-centered approach. This meant that improving passenger experience became a central priority, with a renewed focus on customer service, comfort, and affordability. Passengers were now treated not just as consumers, but as integral parts of the airline's success. Musk's team implemented changes such as more flexible ticketing policies, improved in-flight services, and more transparent communication regarding delays or cancellations. This shift towards prioritizing people, whether employees or passengers, represented a major break from traditional corporate practices. Musk's overhaul was about more than making the airline competitive in a financial sense. It was about fostering a culture that valued human connections and well-being at every level, reshaping the industry into something that better served the people it was designed to connect. At first, Elon Musk's swift acquisition of the airline was met with significant backlash. The media was quick to label his actions as petty, focusing on the rapidity and apparent lack of consideration behind such a drastic decision. Many critics viewed Musk's move as a personal vendetta, framing it as a form of revenge rather than a strategic business decision. This initial public perception was colored by Musk's previous reputation for making bold, unconventional moves, often seen as impulsive or self-serving. His critics speculated that the purchase of the airline was more about settling old scores or asserting dominance over a sector that had publicly questioned his methods or business practices in the past. The media narrative quickly spiraled into one of skepticism and criticism. Headlines depicted Musk's actions as a power play by a billionaire with too much influence, adding fuel to an already heated debate about the role of the ultra-wealthy in controlling key industries. The backlash seemed to reinforce the idea that Musk was a disruptor, not in the positive sense of innovation, but in a more destructive, self-interested way. For a time, it appeared that Musk's reputation would suffer, with accusations of ego-driven decisions overshadowing any potential for positive change. However, as the story unfolded, the narrative began to shift. Musk's deeper motives gradually became more apparent, and a clearer picture of his intentions emerged. Rather than merely seeking revenge or indulging in personal conflicts, Musk's actions appeared to be part of a larger vision to challenge entrenched power structures within the corporate world. He began framing the airline acquisition not as a personal dispute, but as a decisive step to address the systemic issues that plagued the corporate world, issues such as corporate elitism, inefficiency, and lack of accountability. In a pivotal moment, Musk held a press conference to clarify his broader vision for the airline and to address the growing concerns about his intention. During the press event, Musk made it clear that the acquisition was part of a larger strategy to shake up the airline industry and, by extension, the way corporate power is wielded across all sectors. He spoke candidly about the pervasive issues within corporate structures, emphasizing that many industries, including aviation, were dominated by a few influential players whose interests often ran counter to the needs of the people they were supposed to serve. Musk positioned himself as a challenger to this corporate elitism, claiming that the status quo needed to be disrupted in order to bring about meaningful change. Musk's rhetoric centered on the idea that large corporations, including those in the airline industry, had become too focused on maximizing profits at the expense of their employees and customers. He argued that this mentality created a culture of complacency, inefficiency, and disconnection from the real needs of the people. His goal, he explained, was not to make the airline profitable for the sake of wealth, but to overhaul its operations with a focus on fairness, transparency, and people-first values. The press conference marked a turning point in how the public and media viewed Musk's acquisition. His personal motives were still questioned, but the focus shifted to the broader, more ambitious goal of challenging the established power structures that had long dictated corporate behavior. The shift in narrative began to paint Musk not as a billionaire acting out of petty revenge, but as a reformer seeking to create a more equitable and human-centered industry. In the end, while the initial backlash lingered, the public perception of Musk's actions evolved as his deeper mission became clear. His challenge to corporate elitism resonated with many who were frustrated with the status quo, transforming Musk from a villain in the eyes of the media into a figure of disruption and change. In the aftermath of Elon Musk's acquisition of the airline, his approach to leadership became defined by direct engagement with the airline staff. Musk was not content to simply sit in an office and issue orders from behind a desk. Instead, he sought to deeply understand the operational challenges of the airline and, more important, to connect with the people who were on the front lines every day, the employee. This hands-on approach was a stark contrast to the top-down, often impersonal corporate cultures that prevailed in many large organizations. Musk's interactions with employees would go on to solidify his vision of a people-centered company and, ultimately, serve as a model for transforming corporate environments. Elon began by personally meeting with various staff members from ground crew to cabin staff to executive. These meetings were not simply formalities. Musk actively listened to the stories of the employees, taking time to understand their challenges, frustrations, and suggestions. He made it clear that he valued their input and that they would be key partners in the airline's transformation. His focus was on gaining real, actionable insights into the day-to-day operations and pinpointing where things were going wrong. This open line of communication allowed employees to express their concerns and ideas freely, without the fear of retaliation or dismissal. It was through these interactions that Musk gained valuable insight into the internal inefficiencies that had plagued the airline for years. Employees spoke candidly about understaffing, outdated equipment, bureaucratic obstacles, and poor management practices. By listening to their experience, Musk quickly realized that fixing the airline's problems required more than just technological upgrades or structural changes. It was about fostering a culture that placed trust in its employees and prioritized well-being. These conversations reinforced his commitment to reforming the airline's internal practices to create a more sustainable and people-focused business. Musk's engagement with employees was also a symbolic gesture of his broader commitment to creating a company where the workforce was not treated as a mere resource, but as an essential and valued component of the organization's success. This personal investment in employee relations was a significant departure from the typical corporate ethos, which often relegated employees to the background, while executives and shareholders took center stage. For Musk, the airline's success was as much about the people who worked there as it was about the customers it served. As Musk's efforts to reform the airline gained traction, a ripple effect began to take shape throughout the aviation industry. Rival airlines, who had closely monitored Musk's bold moves, began to adopt similar reforms in response to the growing recognition of the transformative impact Musk was having on them. These airlines could no longer ignore the need to address internal inefficiencies and improve their relationship with employees. The changes Musk implemented, ranging from better employee benefits and pay to more transparent management practices, became industry standard, and other airlines began to recognize the value of creating a more balanced approach to profit and people. Musk's actions sparked a broader conversation about the role of fairness, respect, and innovation in the corporate world. The airline industry, often seen as one of the most profit-driven and competitive, was now forced to reconsider its approach. Musk's influence could be seen in a growing movement within the aviation sector to prioritize employee satisfaction, overhaul customer service, and streamline operations without sacrificing the needs of workers. The ripple effect of Musk's reforms was not confined to his own company. It began to reshape the wider industry, pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable business practice and prompting a cultural shift that embraced innovation without losing sight of fairness. As the transformation within the airline progressed, a symbolic moment of reconciliation occurred that further solidified Musk's image. The airline's lead pilot, who had previously been critical of Musk's sudden intervention, publicly apologized for his earlier skepticism. In a heartfelt address, the pilot acknowledged the profound changes that Musk had brought to the airline, recognizing the transformative effect of his leadership. This apology, from someone who had once been wary of Musk's methods, symbolized the broader shift in sentiment within the company. The pilot's words marked a moment of reconciliation not only between Musk and the airline's staff, but also between the old, rigid systems of corporate control and the people-centered approach Musk was fostering. The pilot's apology was more than just a personal gesture. It represented the airline's broader reconciliation with its own workforce and its acknowledgement of the positive changes that had taken place. For Musk, this moment symbolized the success of his mission to create a fairer, more transparent system within the airline. It reinforced his belief that transformation was not only about technological or structural change, but about altering the very culture that underpinned the organization. As Musk reflected on the journey, he framed his actions not merely as a fight for corporate control, but as part of a larger battle for a fairer system. He spoke about the deeper motivations that had driven him to take such decisive action, emphasizing that the goal was never just to make the airline more profitable, but to shift the entire corporate mindset towards one that valued people over profit. For Musk, the journey had become a crusade to challenge entrenched power structures, not just within the airline industry, but across corporate America. Looking ahead, Musk acknowledged that his work was far from done. The airline was only one piece of the puzzle, and he had set the stage for further societal change. The lessons learned from his experience in the aviation industry would serve as the foundation for future endeavors aimed at reforming other sectors and industries. For Musk, the ultimate goal was to create a more equitable system that served the needs of both workers and consumers, a system where innovation, fairness, and respect were not mutually exclusive, but were woven into the very fabric of business practice. In the end, the airline's transformation under Elon Musk's leadership became a case study in how innovation can coexist with fairness and respect. It was a journey that demonstrated the potential for corporate structures to evolve, proving that with the right leadership, companies could balance the drive for profitability with a genuine commitment to social responsibility and employee welfare. Musk's actions set a new standard for what it meant to lead in the modern world, and his reflections on the journey served as a rallying cry for others to follow suit.